Hi, I'm Rachel Carter. And this isn't a story about losing a house. It's a story about what it costs to save one, and what I learned when my name was erased from the deed, the will, and eventually, the family. The wire transfer went through at 3:42 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember the exact time because I stared at the confirmation screen for a full minute, as if my money might change its mind and come crawling back. $60,000. Gone. Just like that. No lawyer, no contract, not even a promissory note. Just a text from my mother the day before. Bank says we have 48 hours before they start proceedings. If there's anything you can do, honey, please. I don't know where we'll go. Brandon's finally getting clean. This is our home. No punctuation. No heart emoji. She never begged. She just dropped it there like a dying pet on my porch, hoping I'd take it in. I did. That house was never mine. I didn't grow up in it. They bought it after I moved out, after my father passed, after Brandon's first rehab. But my mom called it our home, like it was something sacred, like we had history there, like I had a place. 3 weeks later, she sent me a Facebook album titled Fresh Start. Cover photo? Brandon, grinning on the front porch, holding up a pair of house keys like he'd won the lottery. Mom in the background, hands clasped to her chest, tears in her eyes. The caption? Can't believe we saved it. So proud of my boy for stepping up. Not one mention of me, not even in the comments. I didn't confront her right away. I let it simmer, like I always do. She had a talent for reframing pain as gratitude. We're so lucky you're in a position to help. You're independent, Rachel. Brandon's just starting over. You know I'd do the same for you. She wouldn't. She never had. 2 months later, the second message came. Hey, sweetie. Hate to ask, but Brandon's car broke down, and he needs something reliable for work. Would you be open to helping out with a small down payment? Something pre-owned. Nothing fancy. I stared at that message so long my phone locked itself. It wasn't just the ask. It was the assumption. Like I was an ATM machine with no overdraft fee. Like I hadn't just wired my entire emergency fund to save a house I couldn't even sleep in. Like I didn't still remember the smell of those walls when I helped them scrub it down during the foreclosure notice. Like my name wasn't nowhere on the title. When I didn't reply, she followed up with a voice memo. Her voice was light, fake casual. Honey, I just thought since you helped before and you know Brandon's trying, it might be a good gesture spiritually. Giving is receiving, you know, and you're already so blessed. Blessed. That was the word she always used when she wanted to guilt me into pretending we were a family. Not respected, not appreciated, blessed. The next day, I got lunch with Jenna, my best friend since college. We were mid-conversation about some podcast she'd recommended when I just blurted it out. She wants me to help buy Brandon a car. Jenna stopped chewing. After you saved their house? I nodded. She said it'd be a spiritual gesture. She stared at me. Rachel, that woman baptized herself in your generosity, and now she's using holy water to wash his damn windshield. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway, because the alternative was crying, and that didn't feel productive. Jenna tilted her head. You're not actually considering it, are you? I don't know, I said, but I did. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the cloud folder I'd created the day I sent the money. Folder name, $60K. Inside were screenshots, wire confirmations, the Zillow listing, a copy of the foreclosure letter she sent me, a text from Brandon, misspelled and slurred, thanking me with 3 emojis and a joke about needing new furniture. I scrolled through until I reached the latest edition, a scanned copy of a revised will, emailed to me by mistake by my mother's lawyer. Subject line, final copy with Brandon as sole beneficiary. Sole. Beneficiary. No Rachel. No split between children. No provision for what I'd given, just Brandon. And a footnote that the house was now transferred to his name via gift deed, tax exempt. It took me a while to feel it. Not anger, not even betrayal, just clarity. Because for the first time in years, the fog lifted. She hadn't forgotten me. She had made a choice, and I was finally going to make mine. I was 11 the first time I realized I didn't matter in the way Brandon did. It was a Tuesday, the kind where the school cafeteria serves rubbery spaghetti and you hope someone packed you lunch. I'd gotten my first perfect report card. Every single box checked, excellent, No minuses. Not even in PE, I folded the paper 3 times, then unfolded it, then folded it again like some kind of nervous origami. I couldn't wait to show my mom. She always said education was everything. That hard work spoke louder than words. I held it out when she walked in the door from her church volunteer shift, her arms full of half-priced candles and a tray of leftover lemon bars from the fellowship hall. "Mom," I said, bright as a bulb. "Look." She didn't even take it. Just set the tray down and said, "Can you help me unload the car? Brandon's not feeling well." I stood there for a second, holding that perfect paper like it was going to explain itself. She never looked up. I wish I could tell you it got better after that. It didn't. It just got more efficient. The praise I wanted didn't vanish. It rerouted, straight to Brandon, every time. When he got a C+ in geometry, there were cupcakes. When I got into the honors math track, she told me not to brag. When he passed his driver's test on the 3rd try, she called 3 aunts and updated Facebook. When I passed mine on the 1st, she said, "Well, you're always more careful. That's not news." But what really gutted me, what truly rearranged the furniture of my heart, was that night when Dad was still alive. We were sitting at the dinner table, which was really just a second-hand square, with one wobbly leg and mismatched chairs. Mom was flipping through the mail, Brandon was shoveling mac and cheese like it owed him money, and Dad was quiet. Like always. Until he wasn't. "Rachel helped me in the garage today," he said. His voice startled everyone. It always did. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he used them, they tended to sit heavy in the room. Mom looked up. "Oh?" "Yeah," he said. "Changed the oil herself. Didn't even flinch when the jack slipped." There was a beat of silence. And then my mother. She laughed. Like it was a cute anecdote. Like I hadn't knelt on cold concrete for 2 hours learning the difference between a socket wrench and a crescent. "Well, she always was the responsible one," she said, already halfway through the next envelope. And that was it. No great job, no I'm proud of you. Just a passive classification, the responsible one. Like I was a human to-do list that happened to have a pulse. That label became my inheritance. Not money, not real estate, not even attention. Just silent, invisible, unthanked reliability. I was the one who remembered birthdays. Who knew where the insurance papers were? Who called the plumber when the toilet exploded? Who texted Brandon's friends when he disappeared for 3 days during his second relapse? But you know what the problem is with being the dependable one? They stop seeing you as a person. You become a function, a faucet. Turn it on when you need something. Turn it off when you're done. The worst part? I didn't push back. I agreed with them. That's the thing nobody talks about. When you grow up being useful instead of loved, you start to confuse the two. I thought if I just kept helping, kept solving, kept earning their peace, maybe one day I'd earn their love too. Years passed. Dad died of a stroke when I was a sophomore in college. I found out via voicemail. Mom said, "Honey, he's gone. The ambulance came, but it was too late. I need you to come home and help me with the funeral plans. Brandon's taking it hard." No time to grieve, no space to breathe. I dropped everything and drove 6 hours back to the house I never truly belonged to. At the service, I gave the eulogy, wrote it myself, cried through every line. Afterwards, someone I didn't recognize, a cousin's cousin maybe, said, "You're so articulate. I didn't know there was another child." She meant it kindly. She said it with a soft smile. But I felt like someone had reached into my chest and flicked a switch. Another child. As if I were a footnote in Brandon's biography. And still, I stayed. Helped Mom file the paperwork, cleaned the house, balanced the checkbook. Brandon said he was too emotionally drained. He spent most of the week in the basement watching old episodes of Top Gear and vaping out the window. I did everything, because I knew she couldn't, because I didn't want her to drown, because that's what the responsible one does. But the moment that broke me, the moment that would come back years later, when I was staring at that will, happened in the grocery store parking lot. We'd just finished shopping. It was raining. She was fiddling with the cart while I loaded the trunk. Suddenly, she looked up and said, "You know, I always thought Brandon would be the one to take care of me in my old age." She said it like she was commenting on the weather, Like it was just an observation. Like I hadn't been the one standing beside her every single crisis, while Brandon ghosted his way through every responsibility. I turned slowly, raindrops dripping from my ponytail. "Why would you think that?" I asked carefully. She blinked, a little surprised by my tone. "I don't know. He's got that heart, that softness. You're strong, of course, but Brandon has soul." I don't remember the rest of that drive. I think I dissociated, floated through the stoplights like a ghost. Because if strength didn't matter, if showing up didn't matter, what did? So when I saw my name omitted from the will years later, it didn't hurt because it was unexpected. It hurt because it proved I'd been right all along. The first document I saved was a receipt. Not a symbolic one. A literal one. $59,784.10 wired from my account to Bank of America, Mortgage Payoff Department. Subject line: Urgent, avoid foreclosure. The second was a screenshot. My mother's message: "You're a blessing, Rachel. You saved us." Brandon was in tears when I told him. He wasn't. I know because he texted me 45 minutes later asking if I could hook him up with some grocery money too. LOL. I didn't reply, but I saved that too. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. Not in the traditional sense. But I had this growing sense that something was wrong, not just emotionally, but legally. That maybe love didn't entitle someone to erase you. That maybe silence could be a form of complicity. So I opened a folder on my desktop and labeled it family, because naming it evidence felt too aggressive and proof felt too desperate. But family? That was the perfect lie. 2 weeks later, I drove out to the county clerk's office. It was a beige building that smelled like sweat and toner. The woman behind the plexiglass didn't look up until I said, "I need a copy of the deed transfer for 1782 Roselawn Drive." She tapped her keyboard like it had personally offended her. "You the owner?" "No," I said. "I'm the daughter." She raised an eyebrow. "Of?" I gave her my mother's name. And then I waited. When the printer started humming, she slid the paper toward me with zero ceremony. Filed and finalized 4 days after the mortgage was paid in full. Name on title: Brandon Carter. No co-ownership, no trust, no clause, just his name. Alone. I didn't react. Not there. But when I got back to my car, I didn't start the engine. Just sat there, hands still on the steering wheel. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think something dangerous. Not that they didn't care. That was obvious. No, this was darker. They never planned to include me, not in the house, not in the legacy, not in the future. I was never next of kin. I was a stopgap, a donor, a utility with a birth certificate. "Have you talked to your mom yet?" Jenna's voice came through my phone like a rope tossed down a well. "I have nothing to say," I answered. "You don't want to ask her why?" I paused. I don't want to give her another chance to lie to me. That night I started combing through the old emails. There were dozens, some going back years, requests for help, checks I mailed, accounts I paid off quietly just to keep the peace. And every time Brandon messed up, I was the one who cleaned it up. Once when he wrecked Mom's car, she called crying. Not because he crashed, but because he didn't feel safe being yelled at. I wired $3,000 for a used Honda, never even saw a photo. When I asked her about it later, she said, "That was between me and him, honey. It didn't affect you." But it did. It always did. I had an idea, not a plan, not yet, but the seed of something real. I booked an appointment with a lawyer, a small office, no fancy skyline views, just a guy named Mark with tired eyes and a yellow legal pad. He looked over the deed, the screenshots, the wire confirmation. Then he looked at me. "Let me guess, they told you it was a gift." I nodded. "And you didn't make them sign anything?" "No." "That's okay," he said. "They'll wish they had." Mark explained things I didn't know, that when money is exchanged for a property that's later gifted away, it can be considered undue enrichment, that if I could prove intent, pattern, or expectation, I had a case. Not just in civil court, in probate, but he also said this: "If you want to blow it up, we can, but once we start, it doesn't go back." I drove home in silence, stopped at a red light and watched a little boy in a hoodie run across the street with his mom. She held his hand like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. I remember wondering, when did mine let go? 2 nights later, I got another message from Mom. This one voice again. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. I've been thinking, maybe we all sit down soon? I want to talk through some things. Brandon's been struggling again. Maybe you could help with rent for a while until he's back on his feet." She didn't say thank you, didn't ask how I was, didn't mention the house. The next morning, I left a voice memo back. Calm, level. "I think we should absolutely talk, but not at home, not with Brandon. I've hired someone to help me navigate a few things financially, and I'll let him explain what comes next." I didn't hear back. Not that day, not the next. But Brandon blocked me on Instagram that same night, so I knew the message had been received. The last time I'd stood on that porch, I had a check in my hand. This time, I had a folder. The air smelled like wet leaves and artificial cinnamon, the kind they pump through grocery stores during fall to trick you into buying pies you don't need. I didn't come to be sweet. The porch light flickered when I rang the bell. No answer. I rang again. Eventually, I heard the lock turn. "Rachel?" My mother blinked at me. She looked tired, but not surprised. Her voice had that sing-song edge, the one she used when she wanted to pretend everything was fine, like she wasn't sure which version of me she was getting. "You should have called." "You don't answer anymore," I said, so I stopped waiting. She stepped aside. I walked in. The living room had changed since I last saw it. New curtains, a larger TV. The couch was different. Dark gray, velvet maybe. Definitely not cheap. There was a photo on the mantel. Brandon and her, in front of the house. Same picture from Facebook. Except here, it was framed in gold. I didn't see any of me. Not in a single frame. "Want some tea?" she asked, already heading to the kitchen. "I'm good. It's chamomile. Calms the nerves." "I'm not the one who should be nervous." She turned slowly. That was the first crack in the performance. We sat across from each other at the table. I laid the folder down like a deck of cards I'd spent years collecting. She didn't open it, just stared at it like it might bite. "What is that?" "Documentation," I said, "of everything. Payments, messages, receipts, the transfer deed, Brandon's title claim, your messages about needing help, and my help, consistently given." She didn't speak. "And the will," I added, "the one where I don't exist." She looked away, took a slow sip of tea. "You've always been so strong, Rachel." That word again. Strong, like it was a reason to vanish me. "Is that why you left me out?" I asked. "We didn't leave you out," she said carefully. "We just thought Brandon needed the stability more. He's fragile." "He's not fragile, Mom. He's protected. There's a difference." She stiffened. I could see her building the walls. "I've done my best." "No, you've done your best for him. I've been doing your best for you." There was a beat of silence, a small ceramic clink as she set the cup down harder than she meant to. "This house, it's your childhood home too, emotionally, spiritually." "I didn't grow up here," I said flat. "I grew up in a house where I did my own science fair boards while Brandon got a parade for tying his shoes." She blinked. I leaned in. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I just keep writing checks like a vending machine that spits out affection?" "That's not fair," she whispered. "Neither is deleting your daughter from a future she helped fund." Then came the moment I hadn't planned for. The shift. Not in her eyes, but in her voice. "You weren't supposed to see the will." Just like that. No denial, no fake apology, just a sentence that tasted like steel. I exhaled slowly. "But I did." "It's not final," she added quickly. "We hadn't finished. I was going to adjust. The transfer's already done. The will's signed. Don't insult me." And then she said it. "It was his idea, Brandon. He said you wouldn't care, that you had your own life." My chest didn't tighten. It hollowed. Because that was the twist I hadn't expected. She didn't just go along with it. She let him write me out. And she agreed. "So let me get this straight," I said. "He convinced you I didn't care about a house I saved, and instead of asking me, you believed him." She swallowed. "He said you'd make things complicated." And God forbid anything be complicated for Brandon. I stood. You've made it very simple now. Thank you for that. Rachel, wait. You didn't knock when you entered my bank account. I won't knock on your conscience now. As I reached the door, I turned. Oh, one more thing. She looked up, hopeful. This folder? It's not for you, it's for the probate court. Then I left. And this time, no one followed. I didn't send it by email. I mailed it. Certified, signature required. One copy to Brandon, one to my mother, one to the probate court, one to Mark, and one to myself, unopened, just in case they claimed I faked the whole thing. Inside the envelope, a formal petition to contest the transfer of property and the exclusion from inheritance, citing unjust enrichment and undue influence. Attached were Exhibits A through H, itemized payments, messages, transfer deeds, voice transcriptions. Mark didn't want just emotion. He wanted proof wrapped in a bow, and I gave it to him. The day they received the letter, Brandon called me. Blocked number. Of course. What the hell is this? His voice was already elevated, already tight, like he hadn't decided if he was angry or afraid yet. That's called legal notice, I said calmly. You'll want to read it carefully. You're suing your own family? No, I said. I'm holding them accountable. If they happen to be family, that's their choice. He launched into a ramble. Something about betrayal, money. How dare I? But I wasn't listening anymore. I was watching the sun dip below my apartment window, painting the walls gold. I remembered that window. How many times I'd looked through it after wiring money I barely had. How many holidays I'd spent alone while they couldn't afford to fly out. How they said Brandon needed a peaceful environment, and I was too intense. I let him finish his monologue. Then I asked one question. Why did you tell Mom I wouldn't care about being left out? Dead silence. Long enough for me to know he wasn't surprised by the question, just cornered by it. Because I knew you'd make it hard, he finally said. You always have this need to prove something. What do you think I'm trying to prove now? He didn't answer, just hung up. 2 days later, I got a text from my mom. Rachel, we don't need lawyers. Let's sit down, please. Don't do this. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, You sat down without me when you signed everything over. This is me standing up. Mark was in full throttle now. He'd filed a discovery request, scheduled a preliminary hearing, and served Brandon with a notice to disclose all financial assets related to the house. The thing is, Brandon didn't just accept the house. He'd borrowed against it, taken out a personal loan using the deed as collateral. When Mark showed me the document, I felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me. It's more than just inheritance, Mark said. He's liquidating an asset you funded. Brandon hadn't just erased me, he'd profited from it. The night before the hearing, I got a knock at my apartment. I didn't check the peephole. I already knew who it was. I opened the door. Brandon stood there, fists clenched in the pockets of a worn hoodie. You're really going through with this? I already did. He looked around my apartment. The IKEA lamp, the hand-me-down couch, the faint scent of lemon dish soap. All this anger over a house you never even lived in. It's not about the house. Then what the hell is it about? I stepped back. Let the door hang open between us like a metaphor. It's about never being included, never being considered, never being anything more than the person you call when something's broken. And now that you broke it, I'm the one sweeping up. He scoffed. You're still so bitter. And you're still so spoiled. Then I said the thing that finally made him flinch. You want the house? Keep it, but you're going to pay for it, in court, with interest. He took a step forward, not threatening, desperate. If this goes to court, everything comes out. Good. Even Dad's account? That stopped me. What account? Brandon froze. You didn't know? Try me. He looked away. When Dad died, there was an account, left to Mom, life insurance. She told me to say it was empty, but it wasn't. I saw the balance. How much? Almost $80K. My stomach dropped. She told me there wasn't enough for the funeral. She used it, for the down payment on this house. And just like that, a puzzle piece locked into place. I hadn't just saved the house. I'd replaced money she already had, money she chose to give to Brandon, then pretended was never there. You need to leave, I said. Rachel, now! He left, and this time I did lock the door behind him. It was a Wednesday morning in late fall when we walked into the courthouse. Gray light outside, leaves skittering across the sidewalk like they were trying to run from the cold. Mark wore his usual navy suit, his tie slightly crooked like he never trusted perfection. I wore black slacks, a muted green blouse, and the quiet determination of someone who knew exactly what she came for. We weren't there to shout. We were there to confirm what I already knew. They didn't forget me. They removed me. The hearing wasn't flashy. No cameras, no jury. Just a probate judge with salt and pepper hair and the patience of someone who'd heard too many families fall apart over things they claimed didn't matter. Brandon sat to my right, 2 chairs over. He didn't look at me. Mom sat beside him, her purse clutched in both hands like it might save her. She wore lipstick for the first time in months, the same shade she wore to church potlucks. Something about that detail made me angry in a way I couldn't quite name. This isn't a criminal trial, Mark reminded me quietly. You don't need to win over a jury, just show the truth. That's the easy part, I replied. The hard part was living it. The judge began with the basics: transfer date, value of the home, absence of a formal contract, the existence of financial contribution by a non-title holder, namely, me. Then Mark stood. Your Honor, this is not a case of miscommunication. It's not about family squabbles or resentment. This is a case of intentional financial erasure, under the guise of maternal trust and filial duty. He laid out the exhibits like dominoes. The wire transfer. The deed transfer dated 4 days later. The will excluding me. The life insurance record from my father's policy. The loan Brandon took out using the house I paid for. He ended with this. My client didn't want the house. She wanted a place at the table. What she got was a bill and silence. Then it was their turn. Brandon's lawyer, a younger man in a too-tight blazer, tried to argue that family arrangements don't always follow written contracts. Many families make verbal agreements out of love, trust, and shared purpose. Miss Carter gave the money as a gesture of goodwill. Mark nodded, waited. And yet, he said calmly, within days, the property was legally reassigned, the will updated, and not once was my client consulted, thanked, or even acknowledged. Then the judge turned to my mother. Her voice shook when she spoke. Rachel was always the strong one. She didn't need the house. Brandon, he was struggling. So you gave him everything, the judge said plainly. She looked down, didn't answer. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't going to end with justice, not in the clean, cinematic way. There wouldn't be a ruling that healed me, but there could be truth. So I stood up. The judge raised an eyebrow but didn't stop me. May I say something? I asked. He nodded. I turned to face the room. Not the judge, not the lawyers, them. I gave you $60,000 to save a house I never lived in. I never asked for repayment. I never even asked for gratitude. But then you gave it to him, quietly, permanently, and when I found out, you acted like I was making trouble, instead of uncovering betrayal. Brandon shifted in his seat. You made me the outsider in my own family. You rewrote the story without me. And now that it's inconvenient, you want peace? There's no peace without acknowledgement. I looked straight at my mother. You used Dad's life insurance to buy a house and lied to my face about having nothing. Then you called me a blessing while you were giving the blessing to someone else. She started crying. I didn't flinch. I'm not here to take your home. I'm here to reclaim my worth. So here's what I want. The house stays with Brandon, but the loan he took using it, that gets paid back, in full, to me. Every dollar I gave, returned, not because I'm petty, but because you already decided I don't belong. So let me make it easier. I won't come back. Silence. No one said a word. Even the judge just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then finally, he spoke. That seems fair. Mark leaned over. You sure? He whispered. Yes, I said. Let them keep the house. I'm building something better. The check arrived on a Thursday. No note, no signature card. Just a cold rectangle of paper in a plain white envelope. The exact amount I'd given, down to the cent. Mark confirmed it was from Brandon's refinancing payout. I didn't cry, didn't toast it, didn't even deposit it right away. I just sat with it. Because that check wasn't money. It was a receipt for everything I was owed but never named. I haven't spoken to them since the hearing. Not because I'm angry, because I'm done. People think forgiveness is a door you open for someone else. But sometimes, it's the lock you change when they're not looking. Last week, I donated a portion of the money to a legal aid fund for women in financial abuse situations. It wasn't charity, it was closure. I left the rest in a high-yield account. I'm still deciding what kind of life I want to build. But I know this, it won't be built on appeasement. It won't be paid for with silence. And it definitely won't have a guest room for people who only knock when they need something. I don't tell this story to shame anyone. I tell it so someone out there feels a little less crazy for drawing a line they were told didn't exist. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's clarity. I spent years believing that being the strong one meant staying quiet, giving endlessly, and never asking for a seat at the table I helped build. But silence is not grace when it erases your worth. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you close to protect your peace. If you've ever felt like the invisible backbone in your own family, I hope this story reminds you. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued, not just when it's convenient. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to choose between family and self-respect? If this story spoke to you, leave a comment with your thoughts or tell me where you're watching from. And hey, if you didn't connect with it, I'd still love to hear why. What made you click and what would keep you coming back? If this video moved you even a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us bring more real stories that hit home.